Sorry for the delay. Complicated stuff. What a huge, huge news day with the big story busting all over last night. Jimmy Kimmel indefinitely suspended from ABC for his odious remarks, his lies, his damn lies, and his inability to actually confess and apologize. We've got President Donald Trump's latest reaction from just about 30 minutes ago. We're going to show it to you, and then we're going to show you just how unhinged the left reaction has been to this. You'd think that, a friend of theirs just got murdered or something. It's that bad. We'll show it all to you and all their hypocrisy. Plus, Jake Tapper with a conspiracy theory behind this whole thing. No, we'll actually break down exactly why this happened. And no, spoiler alert, it had nothing to do with the fascist in the White House and a threat to the First Amendment. No, this was pure business, because we are all in a business here, including Jimmy Kimmel. It's called show business, and business was not going very well for him or for his network. We'll explain it all to you. And also, yesterday, an amazing hearing in the Senate. The woman who's recently been fired from the CDC, caught in an outright lie. Wait till you see her face when she realizes she's been caught. It's great stuff, and maybe the real reason behind why she got fired. It has to do with vaccines for your children. We've got all that and a whole lot more coming up right now. My name's Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry. Oh, and we're brought to you by the Herzog Foundation, the Lion. And we'll get to that in just a sec. But before we do, please like this show. Give us the thumbs up right now. It's really easy. It's free. And it's good exercise, actually, for your mouse arm and for your thumb. Appreciate that. And don't forget to subscribe as well, as we are working on a special break-in 600,000 subscribers on YouTube special. You guys made that happen. And we can already move toward the 700,000 show if you subscribe right now and recommend us to a friend. We really appreciate it. And don't forget, in the live chat or in the comments after the fact, please tell us how you found our show. Where did you first discover and bring Larry into your life? Thanks. In just 60 seconds, we're going to show you what Donald Trump had to say about Jimmy Kimmel. He just said it over in England. You'll see it in a moment. But first, if you care about staying sharp and informed, make The Lion part of your daily routine. It's published by the Herzog Foundation. The Lion covers the headlines that matter, from politics and policy to culture and faith, all through a common sense, values-driven lens. It's the kind of journalism that goes beyond the surface, offering the context and clarity today's news demands. Whether you're tracking big national stories or you want to know what's happening in schools, state houses, and communities across the country, The Lion delivers smart, well-sourced reporting you won't find anywhere else. Visit readlion.com, and while you're there, sign up for The Lion's daily and weekly newsletters while you're there. That's readlion.com, news that informs and respects your worldview. Well, by now you've heard that Jimmy Kimmel has been fired, canceled, trash canned. I'm sorry, no. I believe the euphemism that Disney ABC put out was indefinitely suspended. And it's all based on remarks that he made. He wanted to tell a joke to everyone the Monday after the murder of Charlie Kirk. But of course, the entire joke, which never should have been said in the first place, was based on a lie. And now the reaction to this from the left is completely unhinged. And of course, as usual, the only way they can make their point is to, tell their own set of lies. We're going to give you the facts and the reality about why ABC did what it did. But first, here's President Trump just moments ago, joint press conference with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. He was asked about Jimmy Kimmel, and of course, he shared his opinion.
Well, Jimmy Kimmel was fired because he had bad ratings more than anything else. And he said a horrible thing about a great gentleman known as Charlie Kirk. And Jimmy Kimmel is not a talented person. He had very bad ratings, and they should have fired him a long time ago. So, you can call that free speech or not. He was fired for lack of talent.
Okay, well, that's a good way to put it. And there's a lot of data, a lot of facts, and a lot of news that we're going to share with you that backs up that opinion. Let's start with this, the ratings. The ratings across the board in all of the late night shows have been plummeting, as you can see from these graphs, all the way to the far left. It'll be 2011, then 2012, 2013. You can see 2014, 2015, all these shows seem to hit their peak, whether it's Jimmy Kimmel Live in blue, Late Show with Stephen Colbert in orange, yellow, let's call it, or The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon in red. Now, these are Nielsen ratings, not share of viewers. They'll often talk about their share, but you see, the share only tells you what percentage of people watching television at that moment you get. So as that pie shrinks, you may still have the same share or you may get a bigger share. But if the pie is shrinking, that means there's fewer people watching. And that means that your advertisers aren't getting a good bang for their buck. These numbers you're looking at right here are not share, the percentage of that shrinking pie. This is the shrinking pie. These are ratings points. And at its peak in 2013, you can see that Jimmy Kimmel was getting a 0.71 share. I did the math for you. That means about 850,000 households, which, by the way, I got to be honest, this show last week beat those kind of numbers on a daily basis for several days. This show, and I assure you, we don't have the staff and the budget, and the host does not get the same kind of salary that Jimmy Kimmel gets. So at its peak, 11 years ago, Jimmy Kimmel was getting a 0.71 ratings point from Nielsen. That's about 850,000 households. That specifically, by the way, is persons 18 to 49, which is a pretty wide demographic wedge. But take a look at the precipitous drop in ratings. As of this year, 24-25, that 0.71 rating has dropped to 0.16. That translates to about 180,000. And once again, just in terms of comparing to this show, we do that every day. We do that every day. We beat that every day in terms of the full episode and segments. Jimmy Kimmel Live at 11:30 p.m. with a giant staff and a huge multi-million-dollar budget on the ABC network was pulling about 180 to 185,000 households. Just a disaster. An absolute disaster. He was also fired, as the president said, for a joke. Now, first of all, let's just be clear. It wasn't a joke. But if you would like to give it some grace and generosity and be as tolerant as possible, you can say, okay, fine. He told a joke about how President Trump wasn't really mourning the loss of Charlie Kirk. Now, understand something. On Monday, when the writers met to talk about that night's monologue, somebody in the room said, hey, I've got a joke about the murder of Charlie Kirk. And nobody in the room said, yeah, maybe we shouldn't. Maybe not. Maybe one person said, murder, probably not. No, okay. Oh, no. Don't get me wrong. It's not a joke about Charlie Kirk or murdering Charlie Kirk. It's a joke about Donald Trump not showing really any outward sign of grieving. Oh, well, okay. If we can make fun of Trump, then yes, let's do the joke about the murder of Charlie Kirk. That was the thought process. And to set up the joke, if you want to call it that, Jimmy Kimmel told a lie. Jimmy Kimmel told a damnable lie. Here's how the New York Times described it. We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. That was the setup to the big knee slapper. And it's just a lie. And nobody in the Jimmy Kimmel hierarchy, whether in the writer's room or a producer for the show or anyone at the network, saw that and said, nope, let's not do this. Everyone's giving credit to ABC and Disney for pulling the plug on Jimmy Kimmel 2 days after the fact. But what about the people who worked for ABC Disney who saw this and gave it the green light to run that night? Because you see, they tape this show around 5 o'clock in the afternoon in Hollywood. It doesn't run until 6 hours later. Many people in the standards and practices department, if they have any standards at ABC, watched it and they were fine with it. Not only is it a damnable lie, not only is it a lie that we all knew was a lie by the time they taped this late Monday afternoon, but it's a lie that suggests that Charlie Kirk basically created his own monster that killed him. That he sort of deserved it after all because it was one of his that he had created. It's despicable. It's disgusting. And I want to reiterate, ABC Disney was fine with it Monday night. And oh, by the way, they were fine with it all day Tuesday. Even after the Salt Lake City press conference where the district attorney laid out the text messages and evidence that proved without a shadow of a doubt that this murderer was motivated by left-wing hate, Jimmy Kimmel and Disney and ABC did and said nothing. And he taped another show, and he didn't correct the record, he didn't retract, and he didn't apologize. It wasn't until yesterday, Wednesday afternoon, when things really reached a head because we let our voices be heard. Which brings us to the real root of the demise of Jimmy Kimmel. It has to do with the companies, not ABC, the companies that own the television stations around the country. Everybody thinks that ABC owns your local station. And to be fair, ABC, NBC, and CBS do own some of their local stations, but very few of them. Most of them are owned by separate companies. These used to be sort of mom and pop local companies that when television first started, they decided, hey, we're going to own a television station. And over the years, of course, most of them have been bought up and consolidated by companies that own these television stations. And then they make a broadcasting syndication agreement with one of the big far networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox. Now, there are two companies that are dominant in the ABC broadcast group. That would be Nexstar and Sinclair. Nexstar, the largest television station company, announced that they had had so many complaints from their viewers, you know, in flyover country, that they were pulling the plug and they were not going to run Jimmy Kimmel's show at 11:30 after their local news. You know, they were going to start showing, you know, reruns of Friends or something. Then came Sinclair Group. Sinclair Group doesn't have as many stations as Nexstar, but they actually have the largest number of ABC stations, especially in major markets. Sinclair put out this statement. Sinclair, the nation's largest ABC affiliate group, objects to recent comments made by Mr. Kimmel concerning the assassination of Charlie Kirk. As discussed with ABC earlier today, Sinclair decided to indefinitely preempt Jimmy Kimmel Live beginning tonight. Following these discussions, ABC suspended production of Jimmy Kimmel Live. So understand something. Both of the two largest ABC broadcast partners who own the local stations that ABC has an agreement with, they said, you're not going to have Jimmy Kimmel Live running anymore. That means that all of those national advertisers that ABC sells national spots to, like Chevy and Ford and McDonald's and whoever was on the Jimmy Kimmel show that they're making all that money for, those ads were no longer going to be seen on all of those television stations. That means the value of those ads plummeted. That means there was no more revenue coming in for Jimmy Kimmel Live. That means that there was no more money to keep the lights on. And that's why ABC Disney did what they did. Do not believe any of the lies you're hearing that there was pressure from the FCC or from Brendan Carr. We'll get to those lies in a minute. But this was my favorite part of the Sinclair statement. This is the real tell. Mr. Kimmel's remarks were inappropriate and deeply insensitive at a critical moment of our country, said Vice Chairman Jason Smith. We believe broadcasters have a responsibility to educate and elevate respectful, constructive dialogue in our communities. We appreciate FCC Chairman Carr's remarks today, and this incident, highlights the critical need for the FCC to take immediate regulatory action to address control held over local broadcasters by the big national networks. In other words, far from this being a big, giant, fascist, elephantine regulatory foot stomp on the throats of ABC, CBS, and NBC by Brendan Carr and Donald Trump, it's the people who own the local broadcast stations who actually hold the FCC license. See, people forget that. The network does not license with the FCC. It's the local stations in every city that have the license to broadcast. Sinclair is actually asking the FCC to increase their presence with the networks. They're not worried about First Amendment infringements by the FCC. These are the people who hold the license, and in their statement, they're asking the FCC to do more. Do you hear that reported anywhere? On cable news or broadcast news? Did you read that in the New York Times? And of course you didn't. It completely upends the fake narrative that they're trying to put out there right now. By the way, further in their statement, Sinclair, just to sort of twist the knife a little bit more on Jimmy Kimmel, said this: Sinclair will not lift the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel Live on our stations until formal discussions are held with ABC regarding the network's commitment to professionalism and accountability. Sinclair also call upon Mr. Kimmel to issue a direct apology to the Kirk family. Furthermore, Sinclair asks Mr. Kimmel to make a meaningful personal donation to the Kirk family and Turning Point USA. And finally, Sinclair announced that this Friday night in Jimmy Kimmel's slot, they will be airing their own produced tribute to Charlie Kirk's life and legacy. God, that's beautiful. And you know what makes it really beautiful? It pisses Jimmy Kimmel off more than anything you can imagine. That narcissistic, egotistical, arrogant bastard. He hates this. Another thing contributing to ABC Disney's decision, according to The Hollywood Reporter, a source says that Kimmel was prepared to address the backlash on Wednesday's show. He planned to explain what he said and demonstrate how it was taken out of context. Oh, lovely. When asked by The Hollywood Reporter, the source said that Kimmel was not planning on apologizing. He felt that what he said did not require an apology. So in other words, he was going to make it part of his opening monologue. It was going to be a joke, and we were going to be the butt of it for being so stupid and moronic and hypocritical and totalitarian that we can't even take a joke. And Disney said, all right, that's it. It's just going to get worse. We're done. And so they did what they did, and rightly so, and appropriately so. Do you know how we know they made the right decision? Because of reactions like this. Keith Olbermann says, burn in hell, Sinclair, alongside Charlie Kirk. When you're pissing off all the right people, you know you're on the right side of the story. It has been said that Keith Olbermann is really just upset because he's run out of places to get fired from. And I think that that's a fair observation. The Democrats on their official Democrat Party social media said, legalize comedy, free Jimmy Kimmel. And our friend Ryan James Gerdusky beautifully replied, as you can see, with a screenshot of Charlie Kirk's own tweet from 2017. Jimmy Kimmel isn't funny. Nobody is making comedy illegal. And if anyone were trying to make comedy illegal, I assure you, Jimmy Kimmel would not be in the FBI's top 10 most wanted. Elizabeth Warren says, first Colbert, now Kimmel, last-minute settlements, secret side deals, multi-billion-dollar mergers pending Donald Trump's approval. Trump silencing free speech stifles our democracy. It sure looks like giant media companies are enabling his authoritarianism. Yeah, because ABC and Disney, Bob Iger, are totally right-wingers, Liz. And I want to be clear here. Nobody has silenced Jimmy Kimmel. Nothing is stopping Jimmy Kimmel from doing literally exactly what I'm doing right now. Jimmy's got a better computer than I do, probably, and a nicer camera. Jimmy, no one's stopping you. Tell your jokes. Let's go. Compete head-to-head with us. Let's see what happens. He's not being silenced. He can say whatever he wants. But there is some notion out here that we'll explore later from some geniuses in the Democrat Party that Jimmy Kimmel has a constitutional right to a television show. We'll show you that coming up in a sec. Gavin Newsom, there is no such thing as free speech under Donald Trump's reign. I would like to take this moment to notify everyone, including Gavin Newsom, who apparently is not familiar with Gavin Newsom, that Gavin Newsom proposed and signed into law a prohibition of anybody putting out an AI version of Gavin Newsom or Kamala Harris in a satire on social media. Of course, it was just struck down by the Supreme Court. But Gavin Newsom, free speech warrior, didn't want to be mocked on social media. So he, as governor, passed a law prohibiting it. He also, by the way, excuse me. Also, by the way, what did he say? There's no such thing as free speech under Donald Trump's reign. During the pandemic, he outlawed going to church. And when he lost that fight in court, he outlawed people singing in church. Gavin Newsom, free speech warrior. Gavin Newsom also said buying and controlling media platforms, firing commentators, canceling shows. These aren't coincidences. It's coordinated. It's dangerous. The GOP doesn't believe in free speech. They're censoring you in real time. You know, it's that kind of talk that could actually fire people up and inspire them to turn to violence if they're feeling hopeless. Gavin. They just can't stop. They just can't stop calling you a fascist. Chuck Schumer says America is meant to be a bastion of free speech. Everybody across the political spectrum should be speaking out to stop what's happening to Jimmy Kimmel. This is about protecting democracy. This must go to court. Oh, please, Jimmy Kimmel, sue. Oh, I'm begging Jimmy Kimmel to sue. That would be a beautiful thing. Hakeem Jeffries, minority leader in the House, along with his whip and his vice chair and whoever else signed on to this. Brendan Carr, the so-called chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. What does that even mean? What do you mean so-called? He is the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. They're so bad. Even when they're lying, they're bad. Even when has engaged in the corrupt abuse of power. He has disgraced the office he holds by bullying ABC, the employer of Jimmy Kimmel, and forcing the company to bend the knee to the Trump administration. FCC chair Brendan Carr should resign immediately. Can I just remind you, the ABC does not hold any FCC licenses. It's only the local stations that hold those licenses. Adam Schiff said Kimmel, Colbert, suits against the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and 60 Minutes, extorting settlements from CBS, ABC, and others, blocking the AP's access to the White House. This administration is responsible for the most blatant attacks on the free press in American history. What will be left of the First Amendment when he's done? It's funny. I didn't know that Jimmy Kimmel was a news entity and a reporter. The free press? Disney. Notice how none of them are angry at Disney or at ABC. They're all angry at Trump and Brendan Carr. Maybe it's me, but I think that's kind of a tell. Like, if you really believe that Brendan Carr and Donald Trump are bullying, why aren't you angry at the weaklings who are bending the knee to the bully? And the reason why you don't see any anger from them is because they're friends. And they get lots of political donations from the likes of Disney and from ABC. And they also know that ABC's in the tank with them. My favorite left-wing reaction, maybe this one, Jim Acosta. In fact, this picture right here, just frame it, hang it in the Louvre, maybe the Smithsonian. This is a Substack podcast waiting to happen. Beautiful. Jimmy Kimmel deserves better than this. He's a class act. Let me pause there for a second. I just want you to know, only because I used to work in entertainment. I used to work in Southern California. I work in radio. Jimmy Kimmel got his start in radio. I know people who have been in Jimmy Kimmel's orbit. Let me just tell you something. You're seeing all of these tributes about Jimmy Kimmel from politicians, from journalists, right? From television, cable news commentators, all talking about how great Jimmy Kimmel is and how terrible this is. I'm going to make a prediction. As this story plays out, guess what you're not going to hear? You are not going to hear from people who worked with Jimmy Kimmel about what a great guy he is, how generous he was, what a wonderful person he was. You did hear that about Stephen Colbert, by the way, and I do believe that that's genuinely true. I think that Stephen Colbert, on a personal basis and on a working basis, was actually a pretty good guy to the people in the staff and his writers and things like that. Let me just say, if you haven't noticed already, you're not hearing that from the people who worked in that studio and worked on that set. A couple of people might say something, just because, they're upset that their paycheck is gone. But no one's shedding a tear for Jimmy Kimmel if they worked with Jimmy Kimmel, or for that matter, have a history in the business with Jimmy Kimmel. And certainly if you used to be married to Jimmy Kimmel, Google that relationship and what Jimmy did after he made it big. That tells you everything you need to know about people. Anyway, he's a class act, says Jim Acosta, and he knows a class act when he sees it. Case in point, after my first appearance on his show back in 2018, he don't you love it when people immediately have to tell their own personal story about this? This is in the news, so let me tell you my story. This horrible thing happened to Jimmy Kimmel. Now, about me, and when I was on his show in 2018, he very thoughtfully asked whether I was receiving adequate security at that time, as Trump was repeatedly smearing journalists as the enemy of the people. Comments that resulted in threats aimed at many of us in the White House press corps. I'll never forget that moment of kindness from Jimmy. It spoke volumes. Make no mistake, our right to free speech is under attack in this country. This right must be defended as it is essential to the American way of life. Who's silencing Jim Acosta? Jim Acosta can say whatever he wants. I love that all of these people go to a social media platform owned by a man that they have slandered and defamed and slimed as a Hitler-saluting Nazi, and have tried to ruin his businesses, right? They all have tried to defame and slime and slander and ruin Elon Musk, and yet they all go on the platform that he owns, and they have all the freedom in the world to say whatever they want. And what they say is they are losing their right to free speech and free expression and the First Amendment. Does anyone recognize that irony? That's funny irony. There's some tragic irony that I want to point out with their hypocrisy in a bit. But I also want to point out one other thing about Jim Acosta's reflection here. It was so touching and so wonderful for Jimmy Kimmel to ask me if I'm getting adequate security. All he did was ask him something. And by the way, he asked him a question at the expense of Trump, right? It was really to sort of show that Trump is putting his life in danger. You know what would have been really cool? If Jimmy Kimmel had reached into his multi-million dollar pocket and maybe paid for security himself. That's where I thought the story was going. And then Jimmy Kimmel single-handedly, without any fanfare and without anyone knowing, paid for additional security for reporters in Washington, D.C. No, that's not where the story went. Jim Acosta is crediting Jimmy Kimmel for being a really class act, one of the best guys in the business, because he offhandedly asked, hey, by the way, you get enough security there? Oh, my God, thank you for asking. It's unbelievable what it takes to be called a class act by Jim Acosta. Jessica Tarlov, our favorite lib over on Fox News, said free speech advocates on the right have a lot of heavy lifting to do, because apparently we'd be hypocrites if we actually think this is the right move for Jimmy Kimmel to be let go by ABC, based on all of the details, all the facts, and all the business realities that I just laid out for you. Apparently, we're supposed to be crying a river for Jimmy Kimmel. Otherwise, we're First Amendment free speech hypocrites. It's a heavy lift. Yeah, well, her colleague, Greg Gutfeld, replied, yeah, pretty easy lift, actually, Greg says. You have a right to be wrong. The company you work for has a right to pull you for it. The heavy lifting is on your end, or you would have made your case. And then later, Greg Gutfeld made an even more important point this morning. I have friends who will be performing in front of live audiences that number in the thousands. They aren't worried about being fired. They're worried now about being fired upon. CNN hacks can't grasp that because they've never had to worry about such threats or an audience. And that's the dark, dark irony that I want you to always remember. Everything that you just saw, and we've got more of the left's unhinged reaction and screaming with their hair on fire about how the First Amendment and free speech is under assault because Jimmy Kimmel got fired. And yet last week, a 31-year-old young man, a father of 2 toddlers, sat on a college campus holding a microphone and literally opening up another microphone so anybody, no matter what they thought, could come and express themselves and disagree with him and challenge him so he could have an open dialogue with him. And that young man got a bullet in the throat and he was assassinated. And every single one of the people that I just showed you screaming about Jimmy Kimmel and the First Amendment, they may have given lip service to, oh, well, this is awful, and we disavow political violence. Both sides are guilty of it. Whatever bromide they threw out there, because their comms director over in the House of Representatives crafted a post for their X account. Not one of them said, this is a terrifying day for free speech. This is a threat to the First Amendment. When an assassin's bullet can send a message to a conservative commentator and talk show host and to everyone else on the right that their ideas and their opinions are worthy of cold-blooded murder, not one of these hypocrites on the left said that Charlie Kirk's assassination could blow a chill wind across this country when it comes to free political speech. But Jimmy Kimmel, oh, that's where the line is drawn. Meanwhile, Brandon Carr speaks for himself. Last night, the chairman of the FCC on Hannity actually explains what's going on here.
Yeah, broadcasters are different than any other form of communication, including here. We're on cable right now. Fox News doesn't have an FCC license. CNN doesn't. But ABC, CBS, NBC, those broadcast stations do. And with that license comes a unique obligation to operate in the public interest. And over the years, the FCC walked away from enforcing that public interest obligation. I don't think we're better off as a country for it. But look, President Trump ran directly at these legacy broadcast outlets, and he exposed them to these market forces. And a lot of these affiliate groups said, to your point, we're tired of carrying this stuff. Late night shows, something's gone seriously awry there. They went from going for applause, from laugh lines to applause lines. They went from being court jesters that would make fun of everybody in power to being court clerics and enforcing a very narrow political ideology. And Nexstar, as you noted, stood up and said, look, we have the license and we don't want to run this anymore. We don't think it serves the interests of our community. Sinclair did the same thing. So there's more work to go, but I'm very glad to see that America's broadcasters are standing up to serve the interests of their community. We don't just have this progressive foie gras coming out from New York and Hollywood.
I hope that in the executive suites of ABC, they are having a conversation today and they're looking at their lineup and their rundown and their broadcast day. And somebody in one of these rooms says, excuse me, how is The View serving the public interest? I mean, maybe we should sort of rethink that programming decision. Trust me, Joy Behar, Sonny Hostin, Whoopi Goldberg, they're quaking right now. Oh, did I mention hypocrisy from the left? I think I did, but let me just display it a little bit further for you as we wind up this opening segment. Chris Hayes, first of all, on MSNBC, had some really, really concerning words about the First Amendment if Jimmy Kimmel loses his job. Watch.
ABC made the announcement Kimmel would indeed be taken off the air indefinitely. And this is just the latest chapter in Donald Trump's ongoing campaign to crack down on free speech, dominate the media, and essentially render the First Amendment meaningless. So it was for the journeyman cable news host Tucker Carlson, just fired from his third network. He believed he could say anything, no matter how vile, no matter how disgusting, no matter how offensive, no matter how dehumanizing or belittling. And if you act like a sociopath over and over and over and over, you will become unpopular on the national stage. That's just like a basic principle. Over time, probably not going to work out well for you in the long run. Eventually, people will be rightly offended, disgusted by it. ABC.
There you go. That's the same guy. Chris Hayes seemed to have a different message when Tucker Carlson got fired for his content than when Jimmy Kimmel got fired for his content. Chris Hayes isn't alone. He's no outlier. There seems to be a pattern of behavior here when it comes to Tucker Carlson losing his job.
Tucker Carlson is out at Fox News. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. What I will say, though, is while I'm very glad that the person that was arguably responsible for some of the largest, driving some of the most amounts of death threats and violent threats, not just to my office, but to plenty of people across the country. I also kind of feel like I'm like waiting for the cutscene at the end of a Marvel movie after all the credits have rolled. And then you see like the villain's like hand reemerge out to grip over like the end of a building or something. But deplatforming works, and it is important. And there you go. Good things can happen.
God, she's smart. Deplatforming works. Okay, thank you. Noted. Deplatforming works. How about the leader of the Democrats in Washington, D.C., Chuck Schumer?
These lies continue tonight. Rupert Murdoch, who has admitted they were lies and said he regretted it, has a special obligation to stop Tucker Carlson from going on tonight now that he's seen how he has perverted and slimed the truth, and from letting him go on again and again and again. Not because their views deserve such opprobrium, but because our democracy depends on it.
That's right. That's a sitting senator, the leader of the Democrats in the Senate at the time, calling on Rupert Murdoch, the chairman of the Fox News Corporation, to fire Tucker Carlson. But Jimmy Kimmel losing his job because the broadcast stations pulled out and refused to play his show, that's a direct threat to the First Amendment. Amazing how the double standards are there. And these people operate as though we have no ability to find what they said in the past. For instance, here's Matt Iglesias. Brendan Carr, the FCC chairman, killed the First Amendment on Constitution Day. That's Matt Iglesias last night. Matt Iglesias, just a couple years ago. Kind of weird that deplatforming Trump just like completely worked with no visible downside whatsoever. He was celebrating deplatforming and removing the former president from all social media sites. That works on two levels, of course. The second level is that it didn't seem to actually work because Donald Trump ended up winning about 10 times bigger than back in 2021. Harry Sisson last night said we are witnessing the most brazen attack on free speech in modern American history. Elon Trump and MAGA said they were free speech warriors. It's the exact opposite. But Harry Sisson, when Donald Trump was kicked off of Twitter, happy 1-year anniversary of Donald Trump being banned from Twitter. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble figuring out the consistency of their message here. I thought they were champions of the First Amendment and free speech. It seems to be only operating in one direction. This guy, Hassanabi, and what is his actual name? I don't know.
Hassan Piker.
Thank you, Hassan Piker. These are all influencers, by the way. Every corporation is instantly folding to the administration, even when it's over an utterly inoffensive joke. Inoffensive. The admin doesn't like. Liberals need to wake up. We all have had to fight back. These wealthy a-holes aren't going to stand up for anything beyond their bottom line. Of course, back when fellow leftist Cenk Uygur raised a little bit of a red flag about Megyn Kelly getting fired, I can't believe Megyn Kelly was fired. I 100% disagree with the decision. I think what she said was wrong, and I totally disagree with her politics, but firing her over that comment is not remotely the right way to handle this. Talk about it on air instead. More speech, not less, which, by the way, Cenk, thank you. I appreciate that. But Hassan said, this ain't it, chief.com. In other words, celebrating Megyn Kelly getting fired. And finally, the pièce de résistance of the hypocrisy of people who were celebrating people like Megyn Kelly and Donald Trump being deplatformed comes from none other than Jimmy Kimmel himself. He depicted what he imagined in his fantasy life. Donald Trump sitting on the toilet looking at his phone and realizing that his account had been suspended. Live look at Trump's bathroom from Jimmy Kimmel. Of course, the good news is, as we take a quick look at that, Donald Trump, when he was suspended, decided to get his friends together and create his own social media platform, Truth Social, and it's worth billions now. When Tucker Carlson was fired, he decided to go independent, and he created his own platform and streams a show still, and he has made way more money and gets much more distribution for his content than he ever did when he was on Fox News Channel. And of course, Megyn Kelly, our dear friend Megyn Kelly, after being fired from MSNBC, decided to start her own podcast, turn on a camera, plugged in a microphone, and now she gets more downloads than CBS and NBC News combined on streaming platforms. So the good news for Jimmy Kimmel is that he can do that. Just like all of those people they just celebrated for being deplatformed, Jimmy Kimmel can do that. Stephen Colbert can do that. Jim Acosta can do that. Joy Reid can do that. Don Lemon can do that. Terry Moran can do that. All of these lefties who got fired, they can just do that. Why don't they? Why don't they just go independent and compete in the free market, the open market, instead of living in that protected little left-wing corporate world that has paid you handsomely and allowed you to do whatever you want and lose your audience by the millions? Why don't you just come on out here and play? Let's compete and let the best man or woman win. Why don't they? We know why. We know why. If you care about the direction of this country, you need to be reading The Lion, published by the Herzog Foundation, the national leader in Christian education. The Lion is an award-winning news site delivering sharp, timely reporting on what's really happening in America's schools, culture, and government. It's the kind of journalism that cuts through the noise and gives you the full picture, especially when it comes to the growing movement toward Christ-centered education. But The Lion goes beyond classrooms. It covers parenting, faith, freedom, and the cultural battle shaping our future. Just like its namesake, The Lion embodies strength and courage, standing firm in a landscape where too many have surrendered our children's future to the left's ideology. Visit readlion.com and sign up for the daily or weekly newsletter so you never miss a headline. That's readlion.com. Clarity, courage, and news that keeps you informed and equipped. That's readlion.com. All right, where are we going here? Oh, all right. The left's unhinged reactions to Jimmy Kimmel getting fired got worse and worse and worse as the evening and this morning developed. Eric Swalwell crafted his own new amendment to the Constitution and proudly made himself look like a moron on national television. We'll get to that in a sec, but first, one of our favorites over here on this program, the only real serious, important, responsible journalist left in Washington, D.C., Jake Tapper. Jake decided that his broadcast day wasn't long enough on CNN. He had to sit in his kitchen and turn on his camera and deliver a monologue to his X and Instagram accounts. Either that or, hear me out, what he says in this video, CNN wouldn't let him say on the air. You be the judge, but put on your tinfoil hat and take a listen to this conspiracy theory from Jake Tapper about what's really behind ABC firing Jimmy Kimmel.
So how do we make sense of the fact that late night host Jimmy Kimmel indefinitely lost his show because of comments he made Monday night in which he said that the MAGA gang was really trying hard to prove that Charlie Kirk's assassin was not one of theirs so that they could score political points? That's what he said. Well, follow the money. In August, Nexstar, the largest owner of TV stations, local TV stations in the country, announced that they wanted to purchase their rival Tegna for more than $6 billion. Now, in order for that deal to go through, Nexstar would need the approval of the Federal Communications Commission. And in fact, they would need the FCC to lift the cap, 39% cap that the FCC has, which is a rule that states no company can own enough TV stations to reach more than 39% of the households in the United States. And this deal going through would violate that cap. The current chair of the FCC, Brendan Carr, he earlier this year said that he would be willing to entertain lifting what he called arcane artificial limits on how many TV stations any one company can own. Okay, so that's where we are. Nexstar wanting to get the FCC's approval, the FCC commissioner making it clear that his mind is open. Today, Wednesday, the FCC commissioner goes on a podcast, a MAGA podcaster, and makes it very clear that he did not like the comments that Jimmy Kimmel made on Monday night. He calls Kimmel talentless. And then he says,
So I think, again, Disney needs to see some change here, but the individual licensed stations that are taking their content, it's time for them to step up and say, this, garbage, to the extent that that's what comes down the pipe in the future, isn't something that we think serves the needs of our local communities. But this sort of status quo is obviously not acceptable where we are.
You believe that?
so he's calling on local TV stations to reject the Jimmy Kimmel show. That was posted on Twitter or X at 1:01 p.m. Wednesday. Within hours, Nexstar makes the announcement that the company's owned and partnered television stations affiliated with ABC will preempt Jimmy Kimmel because they object to recent comments made by Kimmel. And then shortly after that, ABC television network announced that they were suspending Kimmel's show. And so while there are no doubt people who are legitimately offended by what Kimmel said, and no doubt tensions are high and feelings are fraught, there is also a lot of money to be made. And there are also a lot of people who want to endear themselves to the FCC commissioner and President Trump.
There you go. Now, again, I ask you, why didn't he just do that monologue on his show? He's a journalist and broadcaster and teleprompter reader on CNN. Why just put that out from your kitchen wearing a hoodie? Weird, isn't it? Sure is. But I do like watching the moment that Jake Tapper, who's been in this business for a long time, I love watching the moment in real time where Jake Tapper realizes that he's in a business, that he actually works for corporations who are interested in being profitable, that those corporations who put these shows on actually make their money by selling advertising. And when you alienate and piss off your audience at the level that Jimmy Kimmel has, well, suddenly those companies start to get angry because there's no money anymore. I love the moment when Jake Tapper realizes that he doesn't work for a nonprofit or a charity. It's great for you, Jake. I'm glad that you've come to this realization. That's really impressive. Why you have to turn this into a conspiracy theory that suggests that this is all really a big money play and Jimmy Kimmel's just a pawn in the machine. I mean, you read or paraphrased and characterized what Jimmy Kimmel said on the air without bringing any judgment at any point there. In fact, you just said it, people may find it offensive, and I appreciate that. But what about the truth of it, Jake? What about the fact that it's a lie and broadcast networks are in the business of serving the public interest? And if they lie to the American public, there are, in fact, repercussions for that. Nope, that all goes out the window because Jake Tapper's on to the real story. Follow the money. Well, like I said, Jake Tapper is the last real journalist in this town. He's the only journalist who has real integrity. After all, he's the one that finally told the real truth about Joe Biden's incapacity to be president. I mean, he didn't really tell the story until he had a multi-million-dollar book deal. But still, with Jake Tapper, it's all about the integrity. You know, the kind of integrity-filled journalism I'm talking about. You know, when you're a journalist with integrity and you're exposing the real story behind Jimmy Kimmel being fired like Jake Tapper just did, you know, if you had any personal connection or personal friendship or personal relationship with Jimmy Kimmel, the object of the story that you're putting out there, you would disclose that because that's what integrity is all about, isn't it? Sure, that's what you would do. And Jake Tapper is full of integrity. He's the only journalist with integrity left in this town. Yeah, that's right. So he would disclose something like that. Oh, hey, by the way, I wanted to show you this picture. This is a really cool picture that was shared a couple of years ago. This is Jimmy Kimmel's really exclusive birthday party. Kristen Bell, the actress, she put this out on her Instagram. And I mean, look at that. There's only what, like 30 people there. Super exclusive list. And you look at the people at the table and it's like, there's Jennifer Aniston and Courtney Cox. It's like half the stars of Friends are there. And just Jason Bateman from Arrested Development. There's comedian John Mulaney there, right? Olivia Munn. There's Jimmy Fallon. I mean, this is a heck of a list of the elite of Hollywood, right? And hold on a second. Can you hold in the upper right there in the blue shirt? Hold on. I've got to zoom in on it. It's Jake Tapper. Jake Tapper, the last journalist with real integrity who just explained to you the real story behind Jimmy Kimmel being fired. He's completely removed from any emotional connection to this story. He's just following the facts and the money. Oh, and he was invited to Jimmy Kimmel's very exclusive Hollywood elite birthday party. Good for you, Jake. We're proud of you. You're the last great journalist in this town. Even more hypocritical, odious, and enraging is Senator Chris Murphy. He's running for president because, well, you can tell he's got a beard. They're all doing that now. I have no doubt that Kamala Harris will get a beard. Or does she already have one? Doug. Anyway, here's Chris Murphy.
Stephen Colbert is gone. Jimmy Kimmel is gone. Now, you need to see what is happening right now. It is the systematic destruction of free speech in this country. It is Donald Trump using the power of the White House, in this case, the power of his regulatory agencies, to try to shut down any speech that opposes him. Understands the gravity of this moment. This is a moment for the country to mobilize. This is a moment for all of us to be out on the streets protesting, because if you don't raise your voices right now about the assault on free speech, about Donald Trump's decision to disgustingly exploit the murder of Charlie Kirk so as to try to permanently render powerless and impotent those who politically oppose him, there may be no democracy to save a year from now. This is a red alert moment, man. It feels like the red alert has been on since January, but the days are getting darker, which means the obligation on us to stand up and mobilize is getting more urgent.
Red alert moment, he says. Listen, I am going to defer to him about what renders a man impotent or not, because I'm guessing that he's got a better knowledge of such things. However, a couple of things. I just want to reiterate that nobody out there is enjoying the delicious irony of an elected member of the United States Senate putting out a video and posting it on social media about how Donald Trump is silencing all opposition. And yet nobody's stopping him from putting out the video and posting it. And nobody, it's just, everybody's saying that you can't oppose Donald Trump is saying that you can't oppose Donald Trump while they're opposing Donald Trump, and they're all saying it. So maybe there's something more to this. And yet, if I may, I just want to take issue with some of the language Senator Murphy used at the very beginning here, quickly.
Stephen Colbert is gone. Jimmy Kimmel is gone.
No, Stephen Colbert is not gone. Jimmy Kimmel is not gone. They can say whatever they want. They can do whatever they want. Stephen Colbert is still on the air for another 7 months. He just lost his multi-million-dollar annual contract to say whatever he wants on the set of a CBS televised show, and Jimmy Kimmel ditto on ABC. But again, they can go anywhere they want. They can publish anything they want. They can tweet anything they want. They can do their own show and put it out there on a video streaming platform and see what kind of money they can make. Jimmy Kimmel is not gone. Senator Murphy. Stephen Colbert is not gone, Senator Murphy. You know who's gone? Charlie Kirk is gone. He can't say anything anymore. He doesn't have any options. He doesn't have any alternatives. Where's your red alert moment about that? These people do not deserve your respect. Not when they behave like this. They deserve nothing but your contempt. But Eric Swalwell, well, he's in a whole other category. Here he is wearing his Jimmy Kimmel Live baseball hat. 'Cause solidarity, brother. And get a load of this.
Congressman, I see you are wearing a hat. What does that hat say?
You're damn right I am, John. I was a guest on the Jimmy Kimmel show. He, every night, has a right to come into any house that wants to watch and entertain Americans, just as Greg Gutfeld on Fox has a right to be not funny and go on his network and entertain Americans. It's a part of who we are, John, and frankly, it should shake every American that the President of the United States is out there firing comedians who make fun of him. That is not who we are, and every American should care and stand up to this.
Oh my gosh, he even has the shaky voice going. This brings him to tears. So the president is firing comedians that make fun of him. And that's right, I'm wearing this hat. You better believe I'm wearing this hat. I'd like to see Donald Trump fire me for wearing this hat. But hold on. I'd love it when members of Congress invent new rights for us. What was this again?
You're damn right I am, John. I was a guest on the Jimmy Kimmel show. He, every night, has a right to come into any house that wants to watch and entertain.
There you go. I mean, it's a new amendment to the Constitution, or it's been there in the Bill of Rights, and I never saw it before. I don't remember. I feel like I've taken basic U.S. history. Now, is this a right that only Jimmy Kimmel has, or do we all have this right? Is this the Jimmy Kimmel clause of the Constitution? Jimmy Kimmel has a right to come into every household and say what he wants. Jimmy Kimmel has the right to a network television show, people.
Every night has a right to come into any house that wants to watch and entertain Americans. Just
there you go. That's a hell of a right. Now, if you're Senator Tim Kaine from Virginia, of course, that's a right that Jimmy Kimmel has only because the government has given him that right. The other rights, I always thought that our rights come from God, that we were born with God-given rights, inalienable rights from our Creator. I read that somewhere, I'm sure, but not in Eric Swalwell's founding documents. No, somewhere in there, though, is the right of Jimmy Kimmel to go into any household in America that wants to watch him to entertain them. Okay, noted. They're absolutely over the top with this, and they're exposing exactly who they are, and it's fantastic. Van Jones was no better on CNN.
That is why we exist. Not to knuckle under, not to do what we're told, but to stand up and to say, listen, if you want to pull these licenses, then we're going to go to court, and we'll be in the court of public opinion. But you don't get to go on a podcast and set policy for American media, for an American media institution that's been around a lot longer than me, you, or Donald Trump. This is a red line that has been crossed for our industry, for the First Amendment, for the right of people to speak. There was nothing hateful about what was said, and even hateful speech is protected. This is not acceptable. If you are going to run a media organization, it's called a news organization, you have to stand up to government bullying anywhere in the world, and certainly in the United States.
Well, the job should be to, speak truth to power, even when there are people who don't like the word truth anymore.
I think that's my favorite part. You can always tell a really, really amateur broadcaster and host these are the moments when someone like Erin Burnett is not working with a teleprompter, so she has to actually only use her own brain. And the only thing that she could come up with there at the end to sort of tag onto Van Jones was,
speak truth to power.
yeah, that they need to stay. So forgive me if I'm wrong here, but it's a comedy show. It's a late night comedy show. And they are ceding the First Amendment, free speech, Fourth Estate, freedom of the press mantra that they exist to speak truth to power to a 2-bit failed stand-up comedian who started out doing, softcore pornographic humor on Comedy Central, and before that on the Kevin and Bean show on K-Rock. Because Jimmy Kimmel speaks truth to power. But again, the emotion in the voice of Van Jones, the red line being crossed, none of this language was used when Charlie Kirk was assassinated for his political views. Meanwhile, if you watched CNN long enough, you actually, now and then, caught some people being reasonable last night and sort of raining on their parade of free speech rights and protecting the freedom of the press and speaking truth to power. Let's see some of the analysis that actually kind of explains that they're all full of shit.
I don't think this is a legal issue. I don't think this can be pointed to the FCC or the Trump administration and say, well, this is about them going after Kimmel because of what he said. Personally, I think it's more of a cultural issue. And I got to tell you, look, I'm about as moderate a Republican as you're going to get. I'm from New York. I have not been comfortable watching late night television for 15 years because when you have conservative leanings and you're constantly mocked and you're constantly feel like you're doing something wrong, you shut it off. You don't watch it anymore. And then what happens is it's circular. If the host doesn't have that audience, the host doesn't worry about keeping an audience like that. It goes in circles. And at some point, you get things like this.
All right. That's reasonable. That's normal. That's smart. By the way, that's a legal analyst who is Republican, but basically saying, guys, this is not a legal issue. They got nothing. They've got absolutely nothing. And that leads, of course, as we're talking about sane, reasonable analysis, to our friend, the one and only Scott Jennings, who got to deal with all of this last night after the story came down.
You use the phrase propaganda, Professor, and I just have to ask you, what do you consider what Jimmy Kimmel was doing every night or what Stephen Colbert was doing by having on only Democratic guests? Jimmy Kimmel Monday night flat lied about the shooter. Back in the spring, he egged his audience on in cheering on the violence against and wanting, kind of wishing, I think, the downfall of a publicly traded company, Tesla. Do you consider that to be propaganda? Is it good for a business?
Do you consider that to be free speech, Scott?
You use the phrase propaganda.
I'm asking you. You used the words free speech before. Do you consider that free speech?
I consider it to be speech, and he's obviously free to say it.
Will you defend that speech in this country that will defend to the death the speech of others? Will you defend Jimmy Kimmel's speech?
All right. So what you just saw there was the professor pivoting and flipping the question back on Jennings because he was uncomfortable with the reality that Jennings confronted him with, which was, of course, it was propaganda. And again, the argument here, it's a red herring argument and a straw man because no one's denying that people have free speech. The question is a publicly held corporation who relies on income to survive and keep the lights on and has obligations not only to the community through their FCC license, but also to their shareholders, are they obligated to keep someone on the air? And if they take them off the air because they disagree with what they're saying and they don't like that how what they're saying is affecting their potential to do business, is that a violation of free speech? And of course it's not. But you see, this is what people like liberal journalist professors do when they're actually confronted with a challenging issue. They just pound the table and start screaming back, is that free speech? Is that free speech?
Do I defend Jimmy Kimmel going on television and saying that a shooter from the left,
right to do so?
He has a right to do so, but he does not have a right to have a television show where he lies his ass off to the American people and attacks this country on a nightly basis.
Whoa.
Oh, color me shocked that Abby Phillip had to cut off and interrupt Scott Jennings while he was making a point. But then a little later, Scott made a point that is incredibly important for everybody in our business. And by in our business, I'm being very personal now. As a radio host, as a conservative talk radio host, a conservative podcaster and streamer, as a columnist, as someone who has been in the public eye for 15 years now, speaking my mind about politics, and I'm relatively new in the business. What Scott Jennings said here, injected into my veins, because this is what we're all thinking right now after what happened to Charlie Kirk last week and after the reaction we're seeing to Jimmy Kimmel losing his job because of his objectionable content. Listen very carefully to Mr. Jennings right now.
You brought up, obviously, we've been discussing the First Amendment. I mean, there are also statutory issues here. I mean, you have the public interest standard from the Communications Act of 1934. The Supreme Court has repeatedly upheld the idea that Congress and the FCC have to enforce the public interest standard. And what does it say? Promoting civic discourse, educating the public, ensuring a diversity of voices. I think you could make a strong argument that Jimmy Kimmel wasn't doing any of that, nor was Colbert.
Scott,
for that
Scott,
case.
but I'm not going to tell you anything you don't know here. You sometimes offend people. I hear about it on the socials. Do you think that you should then be held to the same standard that you're asking for, that if someone says that you're offensive, that you're not doing civic discourse, that CNN should kick you off? I'm not worried about you and that happening to you in the present regime, but I am worried about other people in this
Well,
building.
two things. We don't fall under the same statutory regime. A. B. I expect to get fired every day. This is a tough business. And if I were Jimmy Kimmel, I mean, I'm surprised that a guy who once wore blackface and caused large-breasted women to jump on trampolines lasted this long in the media business to begin with. He was long past his sell date, and the fact that he couldn't realize that and was going down this road of partisan hackery, being unfunny and demonized.
Oh, shocking. Once again, Abby Phillip interrupting at the end and cutting him off before he can finish his point. But what he said was critically important. We expect to be fired every day. That's been ingrained in our consciousness since we started in this business. Jennings, me, Katie Pavlich, Greg Gutfeld, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, Glenn Beck, the late Rush Limbaugh, for 4 decades now. We know how this game is played. We see exactly what goes on out there. We expect to be fired every day. We have to look in the rearview mirror and over our shoulder as we utter every syllable, live, mind you. Live. Most talk radio shows are 3 hours long. Most podcasts are an hour long. At least this one usually goes over into an hour and a half. In fact, we're already over quite a bit today. And we do it live, as Bill O'Reilly famously said once. Jimmy Kimmel's show has a team of writers, executives, producers. They tape it 5 hours ahead of time. They can edit. They can remove anything that might be on the edge before it gets broadcast. We go live every single day. I personally do 25 hours of live political and cultural content every single day, and I expect to be fired every single day because I know that there are boundaries. I know that there are people watching. I know that there are very powerful interests who are very well funded, who would love to destroy get any scalp on their wall that they can pin of a talk radio host or a streamer or a podcaster or a television host. The advertising boycotts that we've had to endure, some organically, some run by odious nonprofit organizations set up by George Soros and John Podesta called Media Matters for America. Some from Silicon Valley, voluntarily, they just decided to start cutting off advertising several years ago. Couldn't monetize any of our content. Are you kidding me? Really, are you kidding me? This is the world that they created. This is the world that we've had to live in for 40 years, since Bill Clinton accused Rush Limbaugh for being responsible for the Oklahoma City bombing, since Keith Olbermann and Democrats in Congress accused Glenn Beck of being responsible for the shooting of Gabby Giffords, since COVID-19 and the pandemic, advertising boycott, pressure on outlets and radio stations and cable owners, relentless. The fact that people like this journalism professor, who doesn't get that, by the way, as it's a pretty big, important facet of journalism, The fact that the left and the liberals that you've seen all through this program today have lived in their protective little left-wing echo chamber bubble, so that the privilege that they've had, the privilege that Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert have been able to live with, where they can say whatever offensive, odious, despicable, partisan, disgusting thing about you, and they keep getting renewed. They keep getting bigger contracts. Jimmy Kimmel hosted the Oscars. There are no repercussions for them, ever. And now, finally, not because what they said was offensive, but because it's affecting the bottom line, suddenly there's some level of slap on the wrist repercussion for them, and we're all worried about the First Amendment and free speech. Where in the hell have you been? Thank you, Scott Jennings. We assume we're going to be fired every day, and every morning we wake up and we still have a job. It's a freaking miracle in this business. They have no idea what it's like to be a conservative in the media for the last 40 years. And for everyone out there saying that conservatives are hypocritical now because suddenly we're celebrating cancel culture, this is not cancel culture. Okay, I have spent all afternoon now laying out for you all of the details and all of the facts behind the realities of the business Jimmy Kimmel was in that led to him being removed from the air by ABC. And yet he still has his contract, as far as I know, worth tens of millions of dollars. He has multiple homes. He bragged earlier this year to Sarah Silverman, his old girlfriend, on her podcast, that he's already acquired Italian citizenship just in case he needs to leave the country because he hates Trump so much. Jimmy Kimmel's going to be just fine. That's not cancel culture. I know what cancel culture is. I've seen it. Do you remember this guy? Well, you won't know his name. He's a rodeo clown. He probably made $10 an hour, doing a very dangerous job, entertaining people at a rodeo. And early on in the Obama administration, as a joke, he wore an Obama mask. And his life was ruined. His life was ruined. That's cancel culture. You want to know what cancel culture is? Look at this picture. Look at what they did to this teenage boy because they didn't like his smile. Don't accuse me of hypocrisy. This is not cancel culture. We know what cancel culture looks like. We've lived through it. And so do you. We're not hypocrites. We're just living in the world that you created, organized political radical left. And I'm so sorry that you lost your little jester that, let's face it, you didn't even watch either. He's going to be fine. You're going to be fine. Don't worry about that. However, I just want to remind you, if you're really worried about the chill wind affecting open and fair political dialogue in America, it's not this Wednesday, yesterday, that you should be thinking about. It's last Wednesday and our friend Charlie Kirk. All right, that's it for today's show. 2 big beefy segments. We actually had one more, but we went so far over. We're going to do it tomorrow. The testimony that was in the Senate, because it was great. And I love this segment, and we're going to show it to you tomorrow. Don't worry. It'll still be timely. It'll still be newsworthy. But thank you for watching today's show. We loved it so much. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And again, in the chat section or in the comment section, tell us how you first found the show. Where did you first get your first dose of Larry? Let's go to your super chats now, if you don't mind. Mr. Burns. Excellent. Thank you for the $10 super chat, Mr. Burns. Wow, I love it when celebrities watch our show. Patrick with £5. We have a daily viewing party here in Birmingham, UK. Dems aren't mad about free speech. They're mad that people have the right not want to hear it. Are you serious? You have how many? Patrick, are you still in the chat? How many are in your viewing party in Birmingham? I want to go to Birmingham. Birmingham, I'm told, has a lot of canals. Isn't Richard Hammond from Birmingham? I want to go to Birmingham, UK. Kevin, can we do the show from Birmingham?
Yeah, I'll book the flights right now.
Let's go. Oh my God, that's so cool that you guys have a viewing party. What time is it in Birmingham? It's got to be like 6 p.m., right? God's best friend, £2 super chat. Boring Kirk. What about the suffering of Whoopi? Yeah, exactly. Poor Whoopi. How will she survive this chill wind? Thank you, God's best friend. Well said. Patrick is 20. Shut the front door. You got 22 people there watching. Hello, everyone in Birmingham. Is Richard Hammond in there? Aren't you guys called Brummies? Is that what they call people from Birmingham? I am obsessed with English entertainment, by the way. Meredith and I watch 8 out of 10 Cats Do Countdown. We watch Would I Lie to You? We love Richard Ayoade, although he's a little, I think he's lefty. Although I don't know, has he spoken out about what's his name, Graham Lineman being arrested? Because he's the guy who created the IT crowd. All right, Patrick, we'll talk. We'll talk offline. That's so cool. 22 people sitting in a house in Birmingham watching our show. I'm blown away. Thank you, guys. God bless you. Jerry Kunz with a $4.99 super chat. I'm sorry, I just got to say, take a picture of the viewing party and post it on X. Tag me on it. I want to see what all you dirtbags look like. You're all football hooligans, aren't you? All right, Jerry Kunz, $4.99 super chat. No, I bet our audience watches rugby. You're more into rugby than soccer, aren't you? Football, excuse me. These are all out of sorts about Jimmy Kimmel. Did they forget what they did to us for the last 15 years? Let them cry in their soy milk. Thank you, Jerry. I think I made that point at the end of the show, but you're well ahead of it. And thank you for the super chat, Jerry. Is it Kunz? I want to make sure Hillbilly Belinda. Look at you, Hillbilly. That's quite a look. $5 super chat. What did Kimmel do to his ex-wife? I need that gossip. I'm old and I don't remember. Let me just say, I used to travel in social circles that knew Jimmy Kimmel's ex-wife, and Jimmy Kimmel was married at a young age when he was struggling in the radio business as a producer in LA radio. That's where he met Adam Carolla. They were barely getting by, dirt poor. She stood by him through all those years. He finally gets his Comedy Central show, starts making money. He gets his big ABC show, and he dumps her. Like that, because he was having an affair with one of his producers, much younger, ended up marrying her. That's the story. And I know that firsthand because I know someone who knows his ex-wife who actually used to hang out with her. That's the story, Hillbilly Belinda. I love that you wanted the dirt. Ball State alum, $10 super chat. Hey, Jeff. Hey, Governor Hair Gel, I've got your free speech right here, pal. Right here. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. $10 super chat from Richard Murray. Just one time when one of these Democrats claim they get death threats, I would love for a reporter to ask if they can see or hear any of the death threats. I don't buy it. Yeah, maybe, Richard. I don't know. I have no doubt that AOC gets death threats, although blaming Tucker for them was the bullshit move there. But just so you know, we all get death threats. It's ugly out there. I get death threats, and I'm just a lovable little peon in the grand scheme of things. I've been getting death threats from when I wrote for Andrew Breitbart 15 years ago. There's ugly people out there, Richard. So I'm not I have no doubt that she does get death threats. Thank you, though, Richard, for the $10 super chat. God's best friend with a £5 super chat. Tepper is the amazing detective who noticed Biden was getting a bit forgetful, wasn't he? Yes, he's the best journalist we've got. He's just full of integrity. Did you like that moment? Did you like that reveal of him at Jimmy Kimmel's birthday party with all the Hollywood celebs? We might have to clip that one out as a short. Psychological projection is £5 super chat. I claim my First Amendment rights to a late night show, offend half of America, tell lies, not be in the least bit funny, and have no audience. Democracy depends on it. That's right. Thank you, PP. We should all demand that right. Eric Swalwell has guaranteed it to you. A moron. Thank you. Angela with a $5 super chat. Hi, Angela. I'm sorry. We will take into consideration their idea of assault on free speech when they use free speech to vilify the evil rhetoric for Charlie. Yeah, which they won't, and they haven't, and they refuse to. Answer with another $5 super chat. Maybe comedians should be funny to keep a job. Having less viewers than Bugs Bunny reruns probably is not good for business. Well, I mean, I will not be the one to cast a stone there because I'm pretty sure Bugs Bunny gets better ratings than I do on this video platform you're watching. But it is amazing to think, Kevin, when you look at his ratings and his numbers, that we outperform him right now. Our show outperforms Jimmy Kimmel on ABC right now. Just saying.
Imagine if we had that budget.
Imagine, or that staff, or finally a good producer, right? Am I right?
Ooh.
That wasn't fair. Unlike Jimmy Kimmel, I am not having an affair with my producer. I guarantee that.
I can confirm that too.
That was mean-spirited. Dennis Harbin with the $25 super chat. Good work, guys. I feel smarter. Dennis, thank you. That's one of our goals. We want to inform, we want to entertain, and we want to engage and get you guys fired up. So, Dennis, I appreciate it. That's a very generous super chat, my friend. Thank you. Did I tell you that my dad's name is Dennis? Paul Rust with a $10 Australian super chat. Hi, Larry. It's 2:45 in Adelaide. I want to live in a city called Adelaide. That's the best city name ever. Doctor says you need to be bottled as the cure to death. Can I get a close-up of the elephant in case I miss tomorrow's show? Thanks, Paul. Ooh, all right. Hang on a second. Hang on. Just because you're Australian and it's 2:45 in the morning and that you're not feeling well, here is the elephant. This is the elephant. This was actually a wedding gift. Can you read it? It says, it's inscribed, it says the O'Connors, and it has my anniversary. This is how I remember my anniversary. And it's an elephant because I married a good girl from Oklahoma who is, that is the reddest state in America, I believe. And her family is very Republican. In fact, the only way they allowed me to marry their beautiful daughter and their beautiful granddaughter and niece was because I was a conservative talk radio host. Otherwise, there was no way I would have gotten permission. So thank God for that. There it is. That's the close-up of the elephant. I love that people catch things in my background here, especially now that it's blurry. So true with a £10 super chat. I'm in Essex. Just watched the president take off. Great show from the UK. Dude, that scene at Windsor Castle was extraordinary. Unbelievable. I was getting emotional. I love our relationship. We need to go to the UK, man. I'm telling you, we'll like fill a theater and do it live. All right. Essex, excellent. See, this is my lack of understanding of the geography of England. I'm assuming Birmingham and Essex and wherever Psychological Projectionist is and God's Best Friend, that you're all like in the same neighborhood, but you're probably not. Megster with a $10 super chat. Great show today. Bless you and your family. Your commentary is spot on. Thank you, Megster. God bless you. Right back. Appreciate it. Is that it? Thank you. That was a hell of a string of super chats. We appreciate it. Thank you for hanging on till the end. And hello, Birmingham. And we'll see you next time. Did we set a time for tomorrow, Kevin?
Nothing firm, I don't believe, but 10 or 10:30 is what we discussed.
10 or 10:30 Eastern time. We will be going earlier tomorrow. Just FYI. That's why you got to hit that alert bell so you find out when we go. We will have our buddy Chris DeGaulle tomorrow when we will do our show. So don't miss it. We'll see you then. Thanks for watching. My name's Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry.